The saloon lamps flickered in the dusty twilight, their light casting long, trembling shadows on the wooden floorboards. Outside, the desert wind howled, carrying with it the sound of boots, laughter, and the occasional gunshot from restless cowboys drunk on whiskey and arrogance. Inside, however, the world seemed to stand still as Jack Carver pushed open the door, his broad shoulders tense, his hat low over his brow. He had come here on business. Though not the kind he liked, Jack was a rancher hardened by years of loss and survival, a man who had worked cattle and built fences with his bare hands. But tonight he was here to settle a different kind of debt. A woman sat alone in the farthest corner, her dress a faded red that had once been beautiful, her hair falling loose across her shoulders. She raised her head slowly as he approached, her eyes a strange mix of defiance and sorrow, and when she spoke, her voice was brittle yet steady. "You paid for me, now finish it." The words struck him like a blow, echoing in his skull. He froze, staring at her, unsure whether he had heard correctly. But she leaned forward, her hands trembling slightly as they gripped the edge of the table. "Don't stand there like some saint. You bought me, rancher. That means I'm yours. So finish what you came here for." Jack sat down, his rough palms pressing against the table's splintered surface, and shook his head slowly. "I didn't pay for you," he said quietly, his voice low, controlled. "I paid to free you." For a moment she stared at him, confusion flooding her face, her lips parting as if she wanted to argue but couldn't find the words. Jack reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the crumpled receipt, the proof of his transaction. It wasn't a contract for pleasure, it was a bill of sale. He had used every coin he had earned that month, money meant for feed and supplies, and traded it for her life. She glanced at the paper, then back at him, her breathing shallow. Her walls cracked, just enough for him to glimpse the fear beneath. "You don't understand," she whispered. "Men don't do that. They don't pay unless they want something in return." Jack leaned closer, his eyes fixed on hers, unflinching. "Then maybe you've met the wrong kind of men." Her face twitched, a broken laugh spilling out, but it wasn't laughter born of joy, it was bitter, hollow and soaked in disbelief. She leaned back, folding her arms across herself like armor. "You don't know what's underneath," she said softly, her voice carrying the weight of secrets too heavy to bear. Jack frowned, his instincts warning him that this woman carried scars deeper than flesh still. Something in his soul urged him not to walk away, and when, at last, she reached up and pulled the torn sleeve of her dress from her shoulder, revealing what lay beneath, Jack's breath caught in his chest. His heart pounded as he stared, unable to comprehend what he was seeing. It wasn't just bruises, though there were plenty. It wasn't just cuts, though her skin bore more than a few. It was the branded mark of ownership, burned deep into her flesh, a cruel symbol of chains and cruelty, proof that she had been treated as less than human, a property to be sold and used. Jack felt his stomach twist in rage and sorrow. She hadn't been speaking in riddles, she had been warning him. And in that moment, as he sat across from her, he realized the true cost of what he had done. He hadn't just purchased her freedom, he had inherited her pain. The night stretched on, heavy with silence as Jack wrapped his coat around her trembling frame and guided her away from the saloon. Outside, the air was cold, but the streets were alive with whispers. Men leaned against posts, their eyes following, their smirks sharp as blades. They knew what had happened inside, and some didn't like it. A man interfering with business was a man asking for trouble. Jack ignored them, his jaw set, his stride unbroken as he led her to his horse. She resisted at first, pulling back, her fear clawing through her voice. "You don't understand," she said, her eyes wide, frantic. "They'll come for me. They'll come for you. They don't let go, not ever." Jack placed his hands firmly on her shoulders, steadying her. "Then let them come," he said, his voice like iron. "I've faced worse than men who hide behind chains and fire." For a moment, her eyes searched his face, desperate to see whether his words were truth or just another promise that would turn to ash. Something in him must have convinced her, for she finally let out a shuddering breath and mounted the horse with his help. The ride out of town was silent, the moon casting silver light over the open plains. Jack could feel her trembling against him, the way she tried to hold herself together but couldn't keep from breaking. He didn't speak, not yet. He knew some wounds needed space before words could reach them. By the time they reached his ranch, the horizon was beginning to glow with the first hints of dawn. He helped her inside, set her by the fire, and gave her food though she barely touched it. When at last she looked up at him, her eyes glistened with tears. "Why?" she asked simply. "Why would you do this for me?" Jack knelt before her, his calloused hands resting on his knees. "Because no one deserves chains," he said. Softly, "Not you, not anyone. I didn't buy you for myself, I bought you to give you back to you." She covered her face, sobs breaking free as years of pain and fear poured out. Jack didn't touch her, didn't push. He simply stayed, a silent pillar, until she was ready to breathe again. When she finally looked at him, her voice was small but steady. "You don't know what they've done to me, what they've made me believe I am. I'm not whole. I'm not what a man like you should waste his life on." Jack shook his head slowly, his voice firm. "What they did to you doesn't define who you are. They broke their honor, not you. And if you think you're not worth saving, then you're wrong. Because I've seen strength in you tonight that most men wouldn't survive." She stared at him for a long moment, as though weighing his words, as though daring herself to believe. And for the first time, a flicker of hope passed across her face, fragile but real. Jack knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Healing never was. But as the sun rose and painted the sky in fire and gold, he swore silently that he would stand by her, not as her owner, not as her savior, but as a man who believed in her when no one else had. My friends, if this story gripped your heart, if it made you feel the weight of brokenness and the power of compassion, I invite you to subscribe to this channel. Every story here carries a truth that even in the darkest of nights, hope can be found. And sometimes the strongest thing a man can do is simply stand beside someone who thought they were beyond saving. Subscribe now and never miss another tale that reminds us of courage, redemption, and the unbreakable spirit within. U.S. All.